would like to start thanking you very much, Lynn, for organizing this, for taking the initiative to do this very, very important webinar today. It's very timely, and I'm really looking forward to listening to all of you. And for those of you who do not know who I am and why I am here and presenting or welcoming you, is because I'm in the Global Women Network G100. And there I am leading the Wing Security and Defense. And Lynn is one of my collaborators or one of my members in this wing. And that's also why she asked me to be here with the G100 in collaboration with the WICCI and the National Aviation Council. Thank you very much for that, Lynn. My name is Bodil Valero. I'm a former parliamentarian from Sweden and from the European Parliament. And there I used to work with foreign affairs and also security and defense, with a special focus on the control of arms export. And that in a moment when the autonomous lethal weapon systems started to be on the agenda, and where to start with, we said, but who is responsible when something goes wrong? Because as legislator, of course, you need to discuss also the responsibility. And we all already saw a lot of bad things going on with the semi-lethal automatic weapon systems. So this is why I think it's very, very timely that we have this discussion today. In G100 Security and Defense Wing, we don't work only with the military threats. We don't work only with territorial defense. We do talk about human security, but all kinds of human security. We don't divide it, what is territorial defense and what is human defense. We look at all threats, independent on where they come from. It's from climate change, it's from military, nuclear weapons, or whatever. Everything is on our table. And then we have very many different women from very many different countries, and we have a lot of different inputs into this. So, and I'm very happy that you have taken this initiative again, Lynn. As I said, it's a very crucial time. We are in a changing world with Trump's administration. The first webinar we made last year was about security in the era of Trump. And we know now it was even worse than what we discussed then, a year ago. But then we have also the artificial intelligence as such, because it also gives a lot of threats. It gives a lot of opportunities, but it's also a lot of threats if we don't regulate it in a proper way. And that is something that many of our chairs in G100 are working with also. And I'm very happy that I see several of our global chairs here, Brunhilde. I saw Marie-Noël, and I see Hadisatou from Mali. She's in our security and defense wing, one of the women who were in the peace process in Mali. Brunhilde, she's working with the with the SDGs. And Marie-Noël, I don't see you now here, but is a former defense minister from the Central African Republic. And maybe I saw someone else also, Moira from South Africa, also in the wing of security and defense. So on behalf of all of us, thank you very much, Lynn, for organizing this. And then I give the floor to you. I won't take more time because I can speak forever, and I won't do that. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Bodil, for the opportunity to be a part of G100 Security and Defense Wing to start with, and helping me with everything, organizing the meeting as well. And even like thanks to WICCI National Aviation Council and Harbin for providing us this platform where everyone can come together, all the women especially, and work together towards a shared cause. And I'll start first I'll introduce myself. So yeah, I'm Lynn Frederick de Souza. the National President of the Aviation Council at the Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And I'm also the country advisory member for India for G100 Security and Defence Wing. And a little about me. So I'm a global strategist, governance expert, and futurist with 15 years of experience across aviation, AI policy, disarmament, and international security. So I bring an interdisciplinary lens to the evolving discourse on autonomous systems and global risk. I'm also the founder and director of Esperity. I have my own startup here. And I was working for the government of India here in the aviation, as an aviation SME and associate director for the National Master Planning Department, Logistics Department, that is Ministry of Commerce and Industry, DPIIT over here, for the, which is at Delhi. And I'm also a doctoral fellow at GIM and an MBA graduate from Brunel University at London. And I've been, like, my journey includes leadership roles across aviation, consulting, and I've worked for Jet Airways, Genpact, Airworks in the past, to name a few. And I'm also the Globant Awards finalist and the top 62 women in aerospace and aviation to follow on LinkedIn in 2021. So this is a little about me. Now I'll go to Robbie. So Robbie is a military AI expert who has joined us today as one of our distinguished panelists. And he brings deep expertise in the intersection of AI, ML, electronic warfare, autonomous systems. And he's been a lot into the operational side of things as well. Advanced research into field-ready capabilities. And he's also the founder and CEO of Cognoscenti Labs, where he leads applied work in adversarial machine learning, protocol-aware effects, and resilient multi-agent sensing architectures. He has also worked with a lot of these autonomous weapons, that is non-lethal ones, less than lethal ones, and lethal autonomous weapon systems, where he develops software frameworks to evaluate autonomy concepts, operational constraints, and failure modes in realistic scenarios. So Robbie is also the founder of Department 13. And he has also worked with DARPA, SOCOM, AFRL, OSD in advancing digital twin spectrum modeling, protocol-aware electronic warfare, and AI-informed decision-making frameworks. He holds 29 patents spanning RF systems, AI, LPI, LPD communications, and adversarial defenses. So he has also engaged extensively with the US government stakeholders on counter-UAS strategy and preparedness. And he's worked in forecasting as well and defense adjacent organizations. So he brings a mixed approach, a research and operational mixed approach to our discussion. And he also covers governance, verification, meaningful human oversight. And okay, that's about Robbie. And now I'll introduce Fabrizio. So Fabrizio is an AI and data governance expert. He's also one of our distinguished panelists today with us. And he's a chief AI officer and AI ethics and data governance leader with over 15 years of experience across information and technology. Fabrizio brings a powerful blend of technical depth and governance expertise to the evolving global conversation on autonomous systems. He has architected large-scale technology programs, managed significant budgets and infrastructure portfolios, and consistently translated complex technical challenges into scalable, ethical business solutions that advance enterprise sustainability. His work bridges operational AI deployment with structured governance, compliance, and risk oversight frameworks. Fabrizio's expertise in responsible AI, data governance, and cross-functional leadership informs his active contribution to research and scholarly discourse. So he develops a lot of practical frameworks for ethical AI governance, regulatory compliance, and accountable decision-making within technology-driven organizations, capabilities that are increasingly critical in high-risk domains such as autonomous defense systems. So he'll also bring a governance oversight mechanisms and ethical architecture perspective to our discussion today. And we have Neha. Neha is a automation consultant, senior automation consultant and ethical AI advocate. She's also one of our distinguished panelists today. And she's a seasoned expert in RPA, intelligent automation, and agentic AI. She works at the intersection of AI-driven product development and strategic automation. Her work bridges technical excellence with ethical implementation and increasingly critical balance in discussions surrounding autonomous systems and defense technologies. She is certified in ethical and safe AI and is an active contributor to global conversations on responsible innovation. She also serves with the Women for Ethical AI Network at the UNESCO South Asia chapter. And she's also with the WICCI Aerospace Council, where she works on advancing inclusive and accountable AI frameworks. She has also been recognized as an AI trailblazer by the AI Kiran initiative and an AI-aware ambassador at Infosys. So Neha champions a human-centric approach to AI governance, and she's also into equitable innovation in STEM. So her perspective will bring us immense value as well today, especially from the gender bias side, and I think she will be discussing a lot on that in today's discussion. So today's main topic, as you can see, is multilateral policy recommendations and best practices on lethal autonomous weapon systems, that is laws. So right now, we can start with Robbie first. All right, so Robbie, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Yes, it's only the slide.
Yeah, we can see.
So I was saying that I'm a kind of funny use case because it wasn't until recently I started to believe in serious governorship. The reason why is I was staying in these apartments across from the Pentagon on 9/11, and it kind of changed my worldview. And at the time, I was making a lot of money, maybe $80,000 a month or more. And after, I don't know, 3 or 6 months, I quit. Which I'm not doing this, and I'm going to go take that 130,000 job and try to do something. Long story short, I started my own company making stuff for the military. And, I think we did some things that are pretty good. Very rarely did you hear anything about, being careful with these weapons, with anything we made, not even the weapons, because there's a lot of things that people use. They're not necessarily dangerous, but they have a consequence. Everything has a consequence, right? And I gotta tell you, I wasn't very concerned. And I witnessed some things that are like, it's war. You see some things and they're not very nice, and you start thinking, how did that happen? How did it happen? And a lot of times there is a clear, straight, chain of events that led to that, and it's all good. But when it happens that it's your technology that you made to take care of people, then it's a different thing. It's a really different thing. Well, for me, I'm like a critical use case. For me, this governorship was, trying to tie everything down. That's actually what everybody else started doing is trying to nail things down. And I remember thinking, this is not going to work. You can't put the genie back in the box, and you can't do this kind of, I mean, I had some experiences where we were working with senior officials or officers, and they're making comments like it should be implemented as law. And you're thinking to yourself, this is not going to work. It's going to make it unsafe for the operator. You're going to make it unsafe for the transport. You know, all these kind of things that they don't care about because they're worried about some treaty or something that doesn't understand what's going on. And instead of going to whatever the body is, the international body is, and communicating and working with them, they come up with these ridiculous, I would call it wrappers, like duct tape to everything. And it just was not very good. One of the things is when you start having this thing here, policy governs intent and labels. That's why I was saying they're not really talking about the real thing. And I'm saying this, that there is obviously good legal or different kind of regulations. I'm all for that, but there is a tendency to write stuff that the people writing it believe is going to do something and do something useful. It's very difficult to, I think, do that. But I think there's also a sense of, oh, geez, that they really understand the problem. And some of them might. I met people on different groups in Europe who are vets, and they have a good understanding of, you know, like a bomb or something like that. And so they want to regulate stuff around it. You just can't. You can do things like try to control materials going into a place. You can do those kind of things, but you can't stop the guy who's going to go make that bomb. And if you think those regulations are going to help, you're where the mismatch is, right? So I say this is another thing. I still think it's cool, but there's a lot of DARPA made this thing called PCAS, Persistent Close Air Support, and it was unbelievably technologically advanced. They took an A-10. If you don't know what that is a very powerful plane that is supposed to fly really low and help the people on the ground, you know, our troops. And it can take fire from a cannon and still keep flying. It's just this amazing thing. So they turned it into a drone, and you see the gentleman on the left. He is using an Android handheld to program what he wants. And you start to think about that. It's not a big deal. Like, we're seeing people flying all these, you know, scary drones. Something like that would change the game. You're flying, you know, extremely powerful vehicles. And we're going to see that with autonomy. This is autonomy. This was actually very sophisticated autonomy and machine learning. It's coming down the pipe that we're going to see all these sophisticated systems. The sophisticated systems, I think, are the ones that, I mean, this is something a lot of people would say, that they're the ones that are going to do the odd things. You know, go off track, go run away, and, you know, like one of the early DJI drones. Well, the simple ones do this too. And there's in Ukraine, they have a detection system and tracking system. So they see all these drones coming in to, you know, hit someplace, and they start launching interceptors. And for the big drones, they usually shoot 3 at that drone, two or three. And sometimes they miss, you know, fair play. But sometimes their system, the automated system, decides that the missiles they just launched are the threat, and it launches more. Okay, that's not what you want. And it's very hard to debug, right? Some of these things, like, where is the problem? And I mean, I think the whole what goes up comes down. They're launching all of these weapons into the air, and they're not sure where they're going. Right now in the US, if you make something like a jammer, have you guys ever seen a jammer or played with one? You know that they cut the signal off to the main radio on the drone. And often they will kind of do this and then they'll fall. So it's got 3 pounds of explosives and an artillery shell. So when the artillery shell hits, the whole thing goes boom. Yeah, that's bad. And in 2008, my friend and I, Ben Smith, we designed a counter drone solution, which has been out there for 20 years now and doing pretty well. And one of the things we thought about right away, I'm very happy I did this, is that when we are going after a drone that's a risk, we take it over and put it somewhere safe. And that's what you want to do. But there's too many things going on. There's too many different changes or too many different versions of a drone. So what do? You sort of, right now, you sort of hope that nobody gets hurt. Is there better ways to do this? Yeah, way better ways. Why don't people want to do it though? The answer is not just money. It's, I think one of the ways to get sensible governorship is make the friction lower for the people who are trying to say this is a huge problem and we want to work with you to solve it. And for the people on the other side who say there's a huge problem, we need to work with you to figure out how to ameliorate it because it's bad. One of the things that I get very upset about is this human in the loop. Where is the human in the loop? Where exactly in the loop? And I don't necessarily mean the a logical loop, because that doesn't really happen all the time. There's a person there and they make decisions by what's going on around them. And if something's behaving badly, maybe they stop it. And maybe the stopping of it causes an even worse problem because the changes are going too fast for them to follow. And the idea of having humans in the loop for police drones, it's a great idea for the drone to be able to negotiate or talk to real people with an officer who's somewhere else. But the idea that you're going to get in some kind of fight with anybody. Same with the military. The military knows this because they've been doing this for 40 years now. Since the 80s, they've been making vehicles, autonomous vehicles, usually back then it was machine learning, that were weaponized. The fiber drone that everybody is very upset about, that was first DARPA, early 1990s. And these threats just sit there, they're there, and then somebody trips along and sees that they have a new way to hurt people, and they're going to take that solution. So, again, human in the loop is really problematic. I mean, especially with something like these targeting of vehicles and then shooting other vehicles at it. Human can do it, but they just can't do it fast enough. Now, I picked this because this was another thing that had a great effect on my life. There was actually an accident, and it went to the court to suing Tesla, and they got 243 million, I think, out of it. But what happened is the vehicle crashed into a big semi. And the reason why is the light was hitting the sensors on the vehicle, and the vehicle got confused. And the vehicle thought everything was fine in front of it, which is, have to wonder why they don't have other sensors. And there was really no way for the human to respond in time. By the time they noticed, and Tesla noticed, they hit the vehicle. If you've been following the Waymo inquiries, they were saying that with their vehicles, if you look like you're having trouble, like you get into a situation like this, they send you over to the Philippines, where a person takes over your car. The Philippines, there's no way that amount of lag can be handled. I mean, this is a huge thing. This is like why I'm so big on I don't know if you guys do this, people call it hacking, trying to break into stuff, break it, mess with it, do whatever you want, because those edges, those cracks, there's a huge problem there. And how do you control it? How do you manage it? Do you pass rules and laws against the makers of the device, or do you go after the Fed? And in our country, the federal government hasn't done too much about these vehicles, and they might have to, because they're not managed. Nobody's watching. And I think with some of these things, there's got to be somebody watching. Now, I just show you what happened with this. But I'd read this story, and I had this thing in my head about what is the way to defeat like an AI or a different type of machine that was all controlled by a bunch of sensors, but it wasn't necessarily AI. So I quit the company that I made. I was broken. I went and started the new company with a focus just on defeating, not doing anything real nice to whatever I was going after, just like, take care of it and go to the next one, the next one, the next one. And I had this idea. I'm going to use the same thing, light. I'm going to use light to confuse the sensors, and then when I confuse the sensors, I can control the perception. And if I control the perception, I can make whatever I'm after do what I want. And in fact, the AI and machine learning are substantially easier, which is a concern. Who's doing the adversarial machine learning and coming up with new models? The adversarial kind of attacks are, I think they're a must-have. They should be something you have to do. Because if you don't, people find the hole or the edge of the gap really fast. Now, I did this with, let's say, $1,000, and I was able to take over people's cell phones and laptops and computers. I was able to make drones crash. I was able to affect a car. You think somebody running around with one of these would be really, really bad. So that's why I made this. Can I get a time check? Okay, I guess you'll tell me when it's too long. There's a lot of experts on AI and autonomy who are a little confused. They mix up they mix up the definitions. They mix up what they are, and it makes things very hard to regulate. And how do you, when you're having meetings, you're talking about, Alexa, stop. When you're having these meetings, are you level setting first thing? with everybody and you go through all the definitions. What if everybody's freaking wrong? It happens. I've seen it. Everybody there is wrong. And in this case, it was a military thing. We don't look at the problems right. We look at them as this is bad, this is good. This is wrong, this is right. And even when you're making things, people bring this attitude and they take all these invariants and they bolt down whatever the things they're concerned about, like an AI, to the point that they think the AI can't do anything bad. There's always a way. There's no perfect, there's no 100%. And if you think that, you're the one who's going to cause a problem. I've met so many superstars who and amazing people who've built a gadget and it can't go wrong, and they're testing it and it goes wrong, and it's bad, not good. I just showed you, and this is why I showed you that sensor system. It takes your environment and changes your perception, and people believe what the sensors are saying. They believe the drones more than they do their eyes. Sometimes it's obviously hard when you have a big radar footprint and there's all these people flying around, they're all spoofed. It might be really hard to tell who is who. The real way you look at these things is it's some kind of probability. I have a funny way I do it. I don't know if it's better, but there's more than one way to look at those changes, but you have to look at it as non-binary. There was one thing that said testing is often treated as an artifact, not a way to start discussing and understanding what you're working on. I'm working on something. Every time I write a new piece of it, I write a bunch of tests, and it's a governance system for AIs, and it's an opportunity for me to learn this space. But the idea of probing everything, probing the system through the errors. Let's run it with the error and see what happens. What if I take it out? What if I add some more code? Let's see what happens. And sometimes you get some very interesting things. And we've talked about this human in the loop. This is related, the capability boundaries and handoff mechanics. Handoffs are generally very hard to do well, do right, especially when everything's fast. You have to figure out a new way, which is probably more automation or changing how the autonomous system works. Here's my little friends. A lot of these people who use these systems they're in the middle of actually they don't go in the middle of anywhere now. They're in a blown up building, and they're using their laptop to try to spoof vehicles. They have learned the hard way that they can manage things by using the systems they're making, the engineering there, as a way of governance. I'm sure you guys know this very well. You ask people to design something different, and you don't mean that you have a chair and you move it this way and this way so it doesn't cause a problem. No, you totally change the way the car is made. You push the chair up and you change the roof and you put the airbags in. And this kind of approach of your good engineering on your system is, I'm mostly thinking about AI and autonomy as software. It takes somebody who's willing to look bad in front of their peers and their higher up. You go in front of the boss and he asks you for the work, and you show him and say, everything just broke. I blew it up. I'm sorry. And that's should be said as wonderful. Now we've got a chance to make it better. So I think one of the things I mean, if you're working on anything, somebody should be there writing in Python what's going on, writing code right there. It may sound ridiculous, but that works very well. I wonder if this will even work. Oh, the music. So I started this, and I was talking to a few professors because I wanted to try to manage something. And the thing I did different is you have the invariance, but you also have nodes in a graph that are appearing, and each edge has some meaning. There's a kind of a gravity in one part of the edge, and the other edges have an affinity and a gravity. And you can make these really complex relationships to manage and in some cases forecast things by how the system works. But the real point of it is I'm making something, and it's potentially a bad thing. Making something that's a bad thing. It's a series of AIs that are at some point mobile, and they don't really have normal rules. So they have these like desires, wants, imperatives, and they can go off the reservation. The other drones around them manage them through a social function. What I found anyways is this approach allows for extremely fluid management. And every time one of these vehicles starts to go too far, like let's say I'm going to blow everything up, all the other systems, other nodes that have been added over time and everything, they pull that down like a real pulling effect. It's just wonderful to watch. But that's what I'm thinking is might be the future of that technology, which if you think about it, it's kind of terrifying, but it's going to happen. So might as well be first and start figuring out how to stop the bad things. Thank you.
Robbie, thank you. Yeah, we'll go to Fabrizio next. All right, Fab, are you there?
Hi, yes, good morning to everyone. I will be very short just to recover the time we have so far. Let me share my presentation. Sorry for the noise because I'm not in the clear room. Let me know if you see my chat. Okay.
Yes, it's available.
Perfect. So, as I explained before, I am a Chief AI Officer, and I'm in charge for the ethics and governance in many organizations because I prefer to have a human approach to the technology, and this is what I'm promoting. I like to start from the end of the presentation because, in my opinion, you should be clear where I want to go with my slide. So what we see is what I call the functional stupidity evolution. It means everything is happening around the world. Everything is happening around the world. It's just something we see from the people. The outsource of the memory, digital persistence of the data, the slot machine augmented by the social network, the surveillance of the economy, the automation of the AI. Everything is just a clear plan. I'm not for complot, but I clearly see what's ongoing. And at the end of my presentation, I will share just an idea how we can preserve the human agency, even in this context, the one of the current event. Because basically, I like to present the problem with the iceberg metaphor. So we see and we try to promote only what is on the surface of the aspect, but we totally ignore what is below. And this is what we should be good enough to make the good communication to the people. So just a short list of the one I have identified, the bias, the supply chain compromisation, the risk related to the miscalculation of the algorithm, the crisis for the erosion of the stability, the autonomous logic failure, the human on-the-loop overload, and the proliferation of the state actor access. So we are almost delegating everything to the machines. And this myth or legend of the human in the loop is good just for promoting what instead the message are different. And here you can see how the risk don't grow in step, but it does like an hyperbole. So as soon as we start to lose the first level, everything come down like a tsunami. And why this happening? Simple because the people are not data sets. People have an identity, a narrative. But as we are shifting the message, we can be a benchmark for the machine itself. We are losing everything. It's making so far the difference when we have to decide if a target is a kill or not. I like the history, and I believe what's happening in the past is different than the war we know now. No? The paradigm is we don't fight anymore. We fight before to fight with the technology, And this is losing all what is involved in the technology, like the fear, the empathy, the intuition, all the aspects that can make the human able to decide if the target is a target or not. And the machine is deficit on that. It's such of the humanization of the technology, simple because the algorithm cannot understand the value of the human life. For the algorithm, we are just a target to be straight down in some seconds or milliseconds. And in the era of the artificial intelligence, we know exactly everything is not clear, even to those who are creating the systems. The black box is not just a way to decline the responsibility, but it is exactly what's ongoing. We don't know at all the technology we are using, but us are good because are able to optimize, to have a better calculation, to remove the uncertain of the human nature. So we just adopt it at scale. And here now, what is really which one are the capability of the human in the era of the artificial intelligence? It's just like a piece, a gear of something bigger than it, because we don't have anymore the decision. We are just watching, if we are lucky, what's ongoing. But the decision is managed by someone else. And these one are not the humans. As I showed in the first slide, the continued delegation and the automatization of the process has also another effect, because if we don't manage anymore the process, step by step, we lose our capability to understand what's ongoing. And there is like an atrophy of the conscience, because we don't know ethically how to straight and point out this aspect, simply because they are not anymore important. And the other aspect, like who should press the button or not, have another narrative. So what I want to say, I believe in this era, we are already passed the U-turn point. And it will be very hard now to change unless something happens. And I don't want to think what can happen. But for sure, the algorithms are not the solution. Simple, because they amplify our bias. And if this bias and algorithm become systemic, we start to have systemic errors everywhere without the way to change that. So the toxic melange, the commercial of the drone, for example, the open source AI with the lethal capability. Now we know the big problem related to the narrative of the open source. People, we should promote the open software because they have the transparency, explainability. We can see what's ongoing. But the problem is the open source software, even we are facing this aspect of the transparency in the bad hands can have really a bad impact, simply because not all are able to create the technology to have language models or train models. No, so for that, this is another aspect. And now the models are just changing paradigm with this excuse, because we cannot provide open software to those wanna do not the right intent. But from the other side, if we start to close and provide only closed software, we lose at all the ability to understand what is in the code. So for that, as I mentioned before by the other speaker, there is an imperative of the mindful human control. And I believe this capability can be restored with the three aspects. One is the cognitive clarity, the other is the context understanding, and the other is the capacity to intervene. So we should have the trigger in the human, should not be in the loop. We must have the agency to decide if is a target or not. And here is a proposal from a framework. I call it the compliance index, where there is a distinction, proportionality, accountability, and reversibility as metrics on KPI. Simply because we should bar the opacity behind this system. No? So not anymore AI in the nuclear control of the command, and not an end-to-end process without the human, not only in the loop, but in each step of the process. And this is the way to restore the agency, because if we continue to move fast and break things, we cannot at all think about the governance, where governance requires reflection. As I explained before, this one are the 4 metrics for the proposal of this framework. And at the end, the intervention point we could look at when there is a process to be established. So human agency versus machine for restoring moral reality. Thank you for attending, and if there are questions, I will be happy to answer in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Fab. It was a lovely presentation. We'll go to Neha next.
Yeah.
Neha, yeah, you can start.
Sure. Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, Neha, it is visible.
Okay, great. Hi, thank you
Yeah.
for the opportunity.
Yes.
And yeah, sorry.
Neha,
Yeah, it is
yeah,
now
now
it is
now
visible.
Okay, let me go to
Just
slide
make
share.
it yeah, make it slide
Yeah.
share.
Is it good now?
yes, perfect.
Okay. Great. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Lynn, and thanks for this opportunity. And it's a tough act to follow after Robbie and Fabricio, but I'll try to do my best. I just want to also touch upon something that I sit here with the privilege of not knowing what war is, to be honest, or on a personal level. It's just what I read and all of that. But if I make any assumptions or opinions which is not to what the reality is, I would like to apologize in advance. And yeah, my topic is on automated injustice, a gender lens on laws. Yeah. So why now? Because there is this currently the UN General Secretary and International Committee of Red Cross have issued a joint call for states to finalize a legal binding treaty by 2026, which is happening this year, one in March and one in December 2026. So that is why the urgency is there. And this talk has been going on since 2017, where GGEs, like group of governmental experts, have been debating about laws. And most of the countries, over 120 of them, support a two-tier framework, which is, as Fabricio touched upon, a total prohibition on machines that lack meaningful human control or target humans using biometric data. And the other one is a regulation for everything else. But there is a problem, which is the veto problem, wherein the CCW operates on a consensus. So even if a single major power can block progress, then that just takes them back to level 0. Then comes the gender in CCW, GGEM laws. So this also has been building up since 2017. But the conversation was mostly about having more women in the room. But by 2019, it shifted to ethics of biased data sets. Then 2021, it was more about formally recognizing as a risk under the 11 guiding principles, a set of rules agreed upon by high contracting parties, the state obligated to uphold the Geneva Convention. However, there is a gap. Why? Because the gender bias remained only in the agenda in 2022 and 23. It often vanished from the final operational document. This is why in 2024, member states and the UNITER are pushing to treat gender glitches as a fundamental technical failure, not just a side note. The technical why, or the digital fog, as Fabricio mentioned, you often hear about, don't worry, there's always a human in the loop. But in electronic warfare heavy environments, this is a technical impossibility where signal jamming happens. As Robbie said, the link between the pilot and the drone is severed, and most of what the autonomous weapons say is they switch to full autonomy. So in that case, the machine is left to make life or death decisions based on the code. And this code is biased, can be biased, and we have seen often happen that even in domestic or corporate world. And the machine is operating in domestic space, then the human consciousness at the end of that is not there to make the difference between life and death for women living there. Then data is not neutral. We've heard this as well. There's often this myth that the machines are more objective than humans, but AI is the mirror of the training data. And the training data that we have often misses the cultural nuances because sometimes they're developed in one region and deployed in another. Most of these systems recognize women through a narrow lens. If the AI is thought that the military-aged males are the default threat, it renders women invisible to the system's protections. But it goes deeper than that, where even diverse data sets struggles with intersectionality. How would AI distinguish an elderly woman of color in cultural dress carrying a tool from a combatant with a rifle? When facial recognition fails women, especially women of color, the principle of distinction, the bedrock of Geneva Convention, collapses. This leads to something called digital dehumanization, where a person is reduced to biometric data sets. Improving this data isn't a simple software update in a war zone. That experiment has a body count. And facilitating gender-biased violence. This is something that is going to become more serious going forward with all of this AI in laws. That is because beyond technical errors, there is a strategic risk. The machine doesn't have a desire, but it can be programmed to enforce gender-segregated zones and clear specific populations. This can intentionally displace women and girls in high-risk areas where they are vulnerable to human-led violence. Furthermore, if a biased algorithm commits a war crime, we face a responsibility vacuum. Who stands trial, the programmer, the commander? The victim's right to justice shouldn't be erased by the complexity of a code. Some of the real-world signals that we have seen in the past couple of years has been a precursor to this harm. We've seen AI target generation systems that authorize strikes on private homes, often at times where where families, primarily women and children, were most likely to be inside. This is a departure from precision warfare. It's a new era of automated attrition where the domestic sphere becomes the front line. Then the accountability gap. This brings us to the core of the problem, the accountability. If a biased algorithm strikes a domestic space, we cannot allow algorithmic error to become a legal shield for war crimes. We need to decide when the machine fails, who takes the responsibility. Then what are the current policy recommendations? We do have legal frameworks from UN Security Council Resolution 1325, WPS. It was the first law to require parties in conflict to prevent violation of women's rights and include them in peace efforts. But as we look on to the 2026 review conference, the finish line, as it is being called, we should look at legally binding treaties that would ban systems that target human-based biometrics or profiling, mandate meaningful human control, and also require gender impact assessments before any system is fielded, ensuring data transparency through regular independent audits, and then also enforcing accountability. And this has been done before. For example, in 1995, when preemptively the blinding laser weapons were banned even before they were used. And I think that can still be done again with laws. So to conclude, I would say meaningful human control is not just a technical requirement, it's a moral one. And to ensure the empathy, context, and law of war remains part of the battlefield. Electronic warfare might remove the human pilot, but it doesn't remove the human target. It only removes the human conscious that would have prevented a tragedy. Let's make sure we choose humanity over automation. That's me. Thank you.
I thought you did great. It was
Thank
really
you.
good.
Yeah, Neha, thank you so much. So I'll start my part now. So the main things I want to talk about is the confidence building measures and early warning systems. This is the main focus for me right now. So what I would like to say is like, okay, we have seen many cases, like we've seen the situation at Gaza where we had these lavender systems, gospel, where's daddy? And we also seen many cases in the Iran war. We've seen many weapons as well, which we've come across. So considering all this and how to go about it, so the fail safes and the guardrails need to be implemented right from the design of these autonomous weapons, because the thing is, when you deploy it, when it's out in the field, you don't have much time. So what you would want to do here is look at the entire life cycle from intent to impact, and look at the entire supply chain as well, and put in your guardrails at every stage of that. So if you say this intent itself, what are you designing it for? What is the mission? What's the use case? Then R&D design. So I'll put in my fail safe. So there are different failure modes also. And then I look at the testing and validation part of it. So where am I testing it? What data have I trained it on? Where am I testing it? How am I testing it? That also matters. Then how is it working on the field? Testing in a lab or testing in a controlled environment and it working on the field, the context and everything, terrains and everything are very different. Then impact and aftermath. So after everything, we want to get feedback. So we have our feedback loops, which need to give us, we need to collect information from the field and even study that, reverse engineer it, see what can be done better next time. And it's like a learning. So that can be fed back into the system again. Then if we look at, okay, the strategic intent stage. So we could have like more transparency on autonomous in the autonomous weapon systems. Then we could have some oversight mechanisms like more control and monitoring. Then we could have some multilateral reporting under the convention of certain conventional weapons. So in the design stage, there we look at some technology standards. So when we work in the government also, we generally approach things with standards. So if you can't find out what to do, so you maybe start with the taxonomy of the risks or what has happened before from the cases, real world scenarios. and you come up with these like taxonomy of risks and study it. Also, you come up with standards, and the standards can, like right now it's heterogeneous. So we want some standards which work everywhere basically. So that can help us. Like people don't need to know the exact confidential stuff of the war, but at least they can understand how you have tested that, how you have built that, the standards which went into that for the safety mechanism. So they get an idea what to expect, not expect safety wise. And then starting going in depth into the data. So generally, if you look at all of this, it starts from the basic statistical model itself. So if you look at it, your whole impact and everything, your model, your system is as good as the data. So how you collecting that data, what data are you training it on, all this matters. So if you don't have good data, or your data is trained like a training data set and everything is just from a controlled environment, not from the field. So these things make a huge difference. And there are also drifts which come into picture here, like concept drift, data drifts, covariance drifts. So if you have a concept drift due to this whole situation, then your whole model can change over time. It happens in embedded models mostly. So you might have trained it for a specific use case and mission, but if the data is different on the field, it's a neural network. It is learning on the go. So if your field data is not contextually the same also as your training data, which may be a controlled environment, then you're going to have a drift, and that can escalate really quickly. Like you'll have escalation, and that can be disastrous and catastrophic. So having thresholds also is a good way to go. We set some specific thresholds. Then detecting the biases in the systems. That is also important. Transparency in the human control architecture. Then also creating like maybe model cards, like the concept which was given out earlier. Like, okay, what does the model do? At least if there is some description to that, people have an idea, okay, this is what we can expect, or this is what the model, and in which context. So here, what you see is all the data and the math and the quant, but without the context, which is very dangerous because everything can be very different once you put a different context. Supposing I train my data on a mountain area, like say I trained in a desert area, and then I use that autonomous weapon in the mountain area, it's not going to work the same way because now the context has changed. So you have inputs, like what kind of attributes and data go into these things, probably the silhouettes, the shapes, the colors, the terrain, wind speed, all these things matter, like your weather, your environment, everything. So if my sensors are picking up some different data in this, which is not the data I've trained it on, now it could have false positives, false negatives. When you have a concept drift, you will have these concepts coming up in stats also, where you have the false positives, false negatives. And even if they're 10% in a regular commercial setting, it may be okay. But when you're at war, it is lethal generally, and it's catastrophic because it leads to a large scale disaster. And the thing is that even you won't be able to trace what is happening on the go. So what is suggested is having a temporal way of going about it, because maybe when you sent that out, it did not have an issue, but maybe somewhere along the way it collected some unknown data, which is not used to contextually, and then it developed some error. Even a small error leads to big consequences in this case. So then having that temporal setting and guardrails, you can find that on the go. Like, okay, if that has happened at the end state, say some autonomous weapons, they say they don't enable the AI initially. And then when they reach the GPS denied environments, then when there is no other way, last mile navigation, then they turn on that. So if that's the case, then if that's the most critical part where you're targeting and engaging. So this whole thing focuses on autonomous targeting basically. So if there itself you're having an issue with it, and you don't know what's happening, it's very dangerous. That is the main part where it would go wrong. Then having audits, control mechanisms, all this helps. And having, like, even if you have proper robustness checking, validity, reliability, robustness, all of this matters here. Because maybe you have accuracy rate, which is 90%, 80%, but that doesn't hold in real life scenarios. And that is because of not having full knowledge of operations research or statistically what is happening with your model. So it may be underfitted, it may be overfitted. all these cases happen? Like, have you fed in enough data in that, or what is the data contextually, or what is happening? Like, supposing, like Robbie said also earlier, like if light falls on it, it distorts. So similarly, if you have certain patterns, if I have a computer vision system and it cannot identify due to certain adversarial patterns, like recently there was a video up which was from Ukraine of an umbrella. It's funny but true. So yeah, they just put up the umbrella and the pattern on the umbrella distorted the entire detection of the drone. It didn't detect. It was completely not detect. Then you have like heat sensing. So you have your IR and your heat imaging and everything. So if you don't have a heat signature, then what happens? If you get a wrong heat signature, then what happens? So these are also things you want to look at. Then you have red teaming and things like that. So if you have tested it, how have you tested and have you red teamed it? So you have purple teaming, red teaming, all these concepts with scenario planning, I think you want to look at. So that would help us like to see what happens on the field with different scenarios and role playing it or simulating it. So simulating will tell you a lot what is happening with those contexts and with that data parameters fed in. Then benchmarking it also. Then you have, like Neha said, we have the IHL and the Article 36. So talk about these things, like certain things really make a difference in the proportionality and distinction part. And if you talk about Article 36, which concentrates more on the hardware, maybe looking at the software would resolve such issues better, because you want to find where the bugs are or where you're having a drift in the whole model. And it's not about just the algorithm, as Fabrizio said, or just some part of tech. It's the entire governance that you're looking at. So have you put a governance module on that? What have you done? So how are you keeping that secure also matters. So the entire life cycle comes into play here, if you can see. Then this runs into a A2AD scene, because if you talk about proliferation, so state, non-state actors, anyone can access this because it's available off the shelf. So, and it has a dual use potential. So if I take any drone off the shelf, that is one thing. I can change it into I can use it for a military use case with certain modification, as well as I can reverse engineer something which I found, or I can build one similarly as well, which you can't keep track of individually. It's very difficult like that, since there's no regulation banning it yet properly. And there's no accountability in these situations as well. So supposing even Russia has sent one or US has sent one, you can't even trace it back to who has sent it to start with. And then there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation as well. So you find certain intentional coding in another language or something to basically divert it's a deception strategy where you don't realize, like, you're thinking it's come from Russia, but it might have come from US. So there are all these cases where you don't even find where it's come from. And when you talk about A2 and AD, that is your anti-access and area denial. So if you have a swarm of these and they're automated, anything, like if you have them in large numbers where they are self-replicating kind of a concept, so there what happens is you have a complete area denial, which even a terrorist or a non-state actor or anyone basically can do that. It's completely coming in irregular warfare. So you can not, like, you won't be able to enter that area only if it is completely, secured by a swarm of drones or something. And that is the whole point of doing that at certain times, at deterrence and to secure the area. So it depends on your doctrine and your strategy, what you're going about. Then you have automated escalation, which is very fast. So here you have trade-offs of, your speed and safety and your innovation and regulation is what you're looking at. And you need to have a human in the loop, or like, so you have three concepts: human in the loop, like as it was discussed earlier, human on the loop, and human out of the loop. So what is the most appropriate is to have human in the loop, but considering the time and the escalation happening really fast, it's very difficult to have that happen. So that is why we want to bring these safeguards into the, into the R&D and into the making of it itself, in the design, in the whole life cycle, so that it, even if we program it with these safeguards, it will, even if it's going autonomously, it has those safeguards there from the human input throughout the life cycle and supply chain. Okay. Then you have geographical deployment limitations. Then so this also can lead into nuclear escalation afterwards. So that is why it's such a critical topic right now, considering the New START being over and everything. So if nukes are put on these autonomous weapons, and they are clubbed with many things, so it's not just drones or what you see. It can be anything which you haven't seen yet, like biological weapons or DEWs, like lasers, things like that, which could be fitted on this. And basically anything can be fitted on, as well as the drone itself could be a kamikaze drone, which itself carries the payload, which will just explode. It's like a suicidal drone. So that is why it is very important. And we need to have proper identification, also coordination. So if you have swarm miscoordination, again, you'll have issues. Then cyber side, you'll have adversarial attacks and everything on this, which we want to secure that as well. So there should be deconfliction channels, transparency in the environments, coalition environments, then reporting protocols. And it's good to have a risk kind of taxonomy, as I said, so you can see what is critical, what is likely to happen. Just going probabilistically alone won't help, even contextually. You'll have to see what is happening. Then main thing, we don't want any harm to civilians as far as possible, as per the IHL, I think. So here, if there's a 10% error rate also. So if there is, like, if you talk about this lavender system, it had 37,000 kind of data points. So if it has a 10% error also, it's still thousands of people who are not the actual target, it's a false positive, which are getting hit and they are killed. So we have to be careful about this also. Then we can have a good forensic logs as well. And talk about proliferation. So now if you look at Ukraine and the Brave One system over there and everything, so you have like very fast rapid deployment as well, like rapid prototyping, rapid deployment. So like earlier, traditionally, it was taking like 4 to 5 years and all that innovation cycles to bring out a new innovation. But right now they have like 60% completed MVPs, which would take around maybe 18 to 22 weeks for a basic software level MVP. And then if you have the whole basic prototype, maybe 18 to 24 months. So the cycles are going really fast. And recently I'd seen it just recently I'd seen an update where Ukraine is doing it in 48 hours now with the software. So they are really fast. Everything is speed in this situation. And that matters, like if it's a life or death situation. So people are concentrating, most of the defenses would be concentrating on the speed here more than anything. And that also creates this rapid arms buildup. Also having export controls on it, knowing like, okay, is this a part of the system? All this matters. Like if I'm using a sensor from somewhere, where am I getting it from? The semiconductors. And also being careful that no cyber attacks are put in that already. Like if you talk about adversarial AI, or if you talk about zero-day attacks, certain hardware come with these already there in them. So certain places have incentivized for such things to be done. They have incentives. So if you are pre-putting some bug in this thing, which cannot be detected on audit as well, and scanning and checking, while when the time's right, or when you don't know when the 0-day bug will take effect, like when you're flying it or when it will show up. So you have to be careful about this also. Then when you have these things, they also have OSINT coming in, as well as satellite things. So if you're running it in GPS denied environments, mostly that's when this SLAM and everything comes in, LIDAR, SLAM, and computer vision and all these things, because now you're on a GPS denied, or you don't have GPS, or it's spoofed or something. So you will shut off. So maximum you will see spoofing can happen in Wi-Fi, RF, GPS easily. So you will see a lot of this autonomous weapons used in this kind of context more. So if and here you want to have your early warning systems and your CBMs in place, and you want to check for sensor anomalies. And so if you have fail safe, so you have these different in aviation as well, we have certain concepts. So one is like operational failure modes, which are like fail safe, fail passive, fail active, fail operational, all these. So what it means is, like, if something's fail safe, is it safe when it fails? Like, what are the guardrails in that? if it is fail passive, like say I get a error message from that. So that might tell me, it maybe give me a warning message like, okay, this part of it has failed. And then I might want to put in already in the design, 3 redundant systems to back it up so that I don't have a problem or it fails gracefully. And then we don't want a catastrophic failure. So is it going to self-destruct if it goes out of a certain radius, or is it going to catastrophically destroy everything, or like what is it going to do? Like some of them will loiter till the battery is over and go down. So these are certain things like we have to keep in mind in these situations, because the main thing what we're looking at here is the failure mode actually, which is creating the problem also, or the end of the cycle or something. So this is what we want to look at, like how can we minimize that harm to people around, which is very important. So you can have target misclassification, then you can have like we have to be careful about these things as well. So we should have AI to human escalation flags and redundant communication links in this case. Escalation prediction model. So if we look at it in a more proactive approach rather than a reactive approach would help a lot. That way we can already simulate and see what kind of problems we are going to come across. So I have explained the failure types also. Now, what can we talk about like with principles of fail mode? So if we have human oversight, all fail modes can provide human veto intervention, then operational awareness. It's important to have the situational awareness also and see what is happening to make timely decisions and make the system more transparent, as I said, and fail gracefully. And all the autonomous systems should be tested under the real world scenarios. Even when we are designing it, when people give out such things to commercial people to design it, they just don't give the data, field data or something. So they design it in a controlled environment where nothing is a problem. But when you put that on the field, it behaves very differently due to the entire context being changed, as I explained earlier. So testing it also, we need to have proper test beds like adversarial, environmental, cyber conditions, all have to be simulated in that and checked how it's going to actually play out. Right. And some things can continue, like even if there's a failure, it can continue on safely. So these are in the failure modes. If you check the failure modes, you can see that when what can come into place accordingly. So also now when you talk about autonomy, we look at like who is responsible. So coming to this accountability issue. So if you look at the old times Descartes, like what he said, I think therefore I am. So the thing is like you cannot, make it's not a human being in short. So here I think the thing which should be done is a decentralized approach where each one should moreover, rather than being more than playing it out like a blame game, we should try to fix the problem. So if we get some feedback that something's gone wrong, okay, maybe everyone can share accountability in fixing it rather than blaming as much. It's not really helping. And so we want to also have very fast software updates here, like Ukraine is doing. If you see that, so scalable and adaptive systems. So your AI sensors, operational environments, they have to keep evolving as the data comes in. It's a loop which has to keep running. This is what we have so far. So if you check what kind of limitations you face, maybe being context blind, where you don't have a guarantee of a lawful action, then you have static assumptions. So everything, if you're designing the model in a static way and thinking of it completely from the governance and strategy side in a static way, you're going to face more problems. Like you need to look at it in a dynamic way, as I said, what is happening on the go in real time, because you will have issues with your confidence levels, your false positives, false negatives. And what would be good is if you keep risk weightages here. So if you have certain weightage for certain risks, once you've done the taxonomy, like, okay, and this will be aligned with the IHL and everything. So if you keep your risk weightages there and keep like, fail safes or kill switches also to certain things. So then the threshold can be set and the kill switch can be there like that for each of these things, fail safes where it does not cross that. So maybe you can't completely control it, but you can nudge it, like what I'm trying to say is that in the direction you want it to go. And if you have sparse data also, as I said, so going only with probability. So you have probability, plausibility, possibility, confusing these things matter a lot. And having good clarity on the basic model itself matters. And even if you look at it from a game theory perspective, when you look at it politically, like what happens with most of the countries is they feel like, okay, they don't want to do it. Some are doing it for survival, like Ukraine, while some are doing it just because the other country is doing it and they need to. So these are certain things which come even from a game theory perspective, which is a typical prisoner's dilemma situation. So you're worried, what if they attack me? Then I need to have something to defend myself, right, as a country. So these are kind of the situations you come across. So to make probabilistic reasoning valid for laws, contextual modifiers and constraints must be integrated. So what you can have is your conditional probability with operational context. Then you have your Bayesian updating in real time. Risk-weighted probabilities, like I said, hybrid decision rules. And we have this concept in aviation of go or no-go items. Something's gone MES. So similar here, if something is a no-go item, which is a definite problem to people, it should be stopped right there. And if it's a go item, like, okay, this is not such a severe problem, which is classified like a traffic light risk indicator kind of thing, then we can let it go and fix it after it comes back or something. So this matters a lot with the proportionality checking as well. And as I said, many people come to me with accuracy of their models. So accuracy is not everything. Like what is your context and how robust is your model? All that matters as well, because there are certain models are so accurate, but they are completely not a fit at all. So using the right model for the right use case matters a lot. Like if the model is not capturing entire data, then you're not getting the right output already right there. And most people don't find this out until it's too late. So these are also something. So it's not just R values, confidence intervals, and things like that. Everything has to work systemically well together. And when you look at probability, it will generally ignore your legal, strategic, contextual stuff. So what you want to be careful of is not only be mathematically correct, but also legally, strategically, morally, and even, have every side of it taken care of properly. So what we have on that. Then, as I said, you have heterogeneity, which you don't want to have. You want to basically have more homogeneity in the standards. Data and sensor integration, rules of engagement should be compatible, and standardizing the human-machine interface. This is what we want to have. So I just wanted to talk a bit about the cyber side. So here, like there is adversarial attacks as well, what comes across, which you would find here. So misidentifying targets, spoofing, yeah. So having injection attacks as well. You have IR spoofing, radar spoofing, all these things as well attack the system. Data poisoning. So if I have intentionally fed in some wrong data or code, that also will cause issues. So broadly, these are some of the things we look at. So what we'll say at the end is like we have to have a proper contextual risk assessment. We need to have human in the loop, on the loop oversight, then dynamic adaptation. And after the whole feedback, we need to have a post-use review as well, logs, independent oversight boards, incident reporting, conditioning and control and monitoring, basically. So this would help us, see what is happening rather than having that, only speed is the main thing, and normative lock-in or a gray zone stuff happening. We need to know what is happening from the data, what we get. So we collect more data, basically. This would also help us. I think the data is also not so much. Yeah, so that's all I have. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you very
so
much, Lynn.
thank you, Bodil. I hope I didn't bore everyone. It's a lot.
No, it's
So I
it's a
had to
great
write
talk.
it
I
down.
think
Not at all.
everyone have contributed a great here.
I think
Yeah,
there is
so
no time
yeah.
for questions because we have passed the time rather much. But if there is anyone who would like to ask something,
I'll say one thing. We get technology wrong. Technology is still an enabler. It is a way for humans to do things. And even when the technology does stuff and makes something, that's still us. But we have to be careful because like all the LLMs you use all the time, they're a weapon against you for me. When I get in your system, I type a few words, bang. I have you take a picture somewhere, bang. And it's essentially with the LLMs, you can't stop it when the LLM consumes it. So you have to put all this scaffolding in front of it. I was around when a certain one of our intelligence agencies put those in. And I ended up working with this group of 17 people. And most of them just didn't care. They're just like, yeah, it's not a problem. Well, it's an AWS cloud. Nobody can get in there. And it's one of the things about this stuff is you're going to find that everybody disagrees somewhere, right? I'm disagreeing right now. But the other thing you have to realize is there's always somebody somewhere who can make it work or get into it. So every time you hear somebody say a what do you call it? The trigger to make something stop or something, it's fail safe. And like if you go to like play with a nuclear bomb, they have some good fail safes. In fact, they're unbelievable, but there's still people who defuse them, right? So the fail-safe thing is definitely, you should do that. You should just do that. But if it's something like drones and they're flying anywhere, someone's going to get into it. You have to, that's the other thing. You have to make sure it's secure because everything can get it into it. It's just, it's very difficult. Sorry, I get impassioned by that. I'll tell one quick story. I have a friend, his name Kevin Finisterre. He in part got DJI kicked out of the country. The other thing that's interesting about him is he's always doing these neat things. Like he tried to get Ukraine to stop using a tool and they wouldn't. And like I think a school got blown up, then they stopped. But there was this interesting incident recently. There's this company called Unitree that makes a humanoid robot and a dog. So everybody's talking about that's a scary situation. What if those things go crazy? I agree with that. But the thing that's more worrisome, my friend Kevin got into those devices right away, and they got into the factory. And they told the Chinese they're doing all of this. They said, this is what we've done, ethical disclosure, warning, you need to secure your stuff. And so what do you do with people like that? Punish them? Maybe you should. I don't know. What do you think? Nobody has a thought. Okay.
I just wanted to say, like, I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but when you have a lot of swarms or a lot of these in numbers, and you have two countries at war, so this is a thing which will escalate a lot because now you don't know both sides of autonomous weapons what they're going to see and decide basically based on their sensors. So kind of a situation. So we even ran a foresight and forecasting thing basically where we did this Janus cone where we've seen this unbounded situation, gray hybrid situation, and full in control human in the loop situation. So we even seen the tipping points here to see what happened, and we seen all this like swarm, EWAR, then we have certain first strike also. Like so far it was used defensively, but it can be used offensively as well. Now it is going into that mode, right? Like America and everyone might just attack first because they are on that AI first doctrine. So the thing is, like, right now things will change, and even if both sides have a lot of autonomous weapons, it will escalate much worse. So this comes into a complete existential risk right now, which is why it is very worrisome. Yeah,
No,
that's all I
I
wanted to say.
think no, you're talking about real stuff, except for swarms. There's only a couple of them. Everybody who talks about swarms, they're talking about groups or clusters of drones, and it's important because one is a lot more dangerous, a lot more dangerous. But you know, there's things you like doing these what is it, immutable logs. That works pretty well, and you track all your devices. And the idea of having a person in the loop is really good when it's don't go there anymore, don't do this. When you have the space and the time. If you don't and you try to do it, you often cause more problem. I mean, you look at the nuclear power plants, the training that people get. One of the first things they say is you have time. You always have time. Take your time. Look at everything. Think, go. So in those cases, absolutely. Absolutely. When the devices are engaged, you know, it's relatively difficult. Another thing that people don't seem to realize is when that drone goes out of your control, it's out of your control. You can't see it. You can't, you know, get it on the line, and it's that's not a good feeling. You know, let's say you have swarms of those going off, and nobody's talking to them. You just have to trust in the engineers. It's not a thing I trust. I don't like